Hello everyone, it's Randy here, live in the beautiful city of Florence, Italy. Today I am going to talk about success and how to achieve success in your life. And specifically, I'm talking about success with a capital S. I'm going to explain what I mean by that in a second, but I define success in the form of two types of success. We'll call them private success and public success. Private success we'll call lower capital S success, and public success we'll call capital S success. So private success is the success you achieve in your daily life. And for many people, that's enough. They don't need to achieve public success. But private success is your health, right? Being healthy, being physically healthy, mentally healthy, having good friends and family members around you, being surrounded by amazing people. That's absolutely a key component of success. Having good relationships, being happy, being fulfilled, doing something that you love, having enough financial resources to support yourself and those around you so that you can live the lifestyle that you want. These are elements of private success, and in fact, a lot of people struggle even to attain that level of private success. We're not even talking about public success at the moment. We're just in one's private life. So by those metrics, I would say that I am successful, lower capital S, successful. I achieved financial freedom in my early mid-30s, so I don't worry about money anymore. I'm relatively healthy. I'm working all the time on my mental health as well. It's not perfect, but I'm making big gains with respect to my mental health. So I'm relatively happy as a person. I have a very special lady in my life who I love deeply and who I have a very fulfilling relationship with. I have great friends and family members. I have good, a good circle of people around me. I run a law firm that's thriving. We have around 20 people now at the law firm. Whereas a lot of people are struggling to buy even one property these days, I have two properties. So by all of these metrics, and by these criteria, I am successful, lower capital S successful. But by the metrics of public success, capital S success, not at all. We're not really, right? I'm not successful with a capital S. I will explain why. And this is not a criticism of myself, and this is not a criticism of anyone, because there are people who have capital S success who are not successful with the lower S, right? People who are very popular, very famous, then they commit suicide or they die of a drug overdose or they have these tragic lives. Even though they've obtained some level of public success, they are privately tortured. And by no means do they have a very successful private life. So in that sense, there's no hierarchy here. It's not to say that capital S success is more important or has greater virtue than lower capital S success. I'm not making that point here. Both are important. But if I were to just disappear right now, I would disappear with a lot of lower capital S success, but really not a lot of capital S success. I don't think there will be too many people who would be affected by my sudden disappearance. I mean, obviously those close to me would hopefully be sad, but by way of the wider world, not really, right? I would be most likely just a mere footnote in history. No one of renown. But how do we change that, right? So how do we go from, at least for me, how do we go from private success to attaining a level of public success, capital S success? That's the nature of today's video. And there are 4 criteria for capital S success that I want to focus on. The criteria are: number 1, surface area; number 2, ethos; number 3 is publicity; and number 4 is desire. So I'm going to repeat that. Number 1, surface area; number 2, ethos; number 3, publicity; and number 4, desire. So these are the 4 criteria through which to attain public success. And when we think of public success, we're talking about people of influence and renown, people in the public eye, people who you may know of. And in fact, public success in some sense is defined by your level of power, influence, and renown, right, relative to society at large and relative to perhaps the world at large. So let's dive into number 1. First of all, surface area. So surface area is how many points of interaction do you have with your environment, right? And I mean environment not just as in your physical environment, but as in your social environment, in the world that you live in, your relationships with other people, your general interaction with just the world around you. How much interaction and how much influence do you have on the world around you, right? I'll give you a very obvious example right now. It's 2025. A man with a very large surface area would probably be Donald Trump, right? President Donald Trump has a very large surface area. You could agree with him or disagree with him with respect to his policies, and many people disagree with him. But the man has a lot of surface area, right? His decisions have a lot of weight. He has a lot of influence, and he throws his weight around, right? So I'm using surface area from sort of a science perspective, right? If you look at just the amount of stuff that he's interacting with, and that other people are forced to interact with in a way. So like his decisions have an effect on me. Most likely his decisions have an effect on you. He may not know you. Chances are he does not. But his decisions nevertheless have an effect on you, right? That's a large surface area. That's a large, there's this large blanket points of interaction where your life is affected by his decisions and his choices, and his policies and how he wishes to carry himself in the world. Whereas your decisions may not have any effect on him, right? So there's not necessarily a reciprocal inverse relationship with surface area. It can often be a one-way relationship. Now, let's give you another example about surface area. Suppose you are someone, living in your mom's basement or your dad's basement. You play video games and you barely go out. You order your food, and maybe you hold a part-time online job, but you're not doing much, or maybe you're just studying. You have very low surface area, right? Your interaction with the world and your influence on the world is minimal. You may be self-sufficient, but you hardly have any real influence on the world. The world may have a lot of influence on you, or maybe you hide from the world, but you have very low surface area. So there are, for example, many people who live like this, who have very low surface area. They stick to themselves. And again, this is not a criticism of good or bad, but this is just a reality that some people have very low surface area, and there are very few points of interaction that they have with other people, with their world, with just the greater environment around them. Now, if I look at myself, for example, what level of surface area do I have relative to my environment? I think I have a moderate amount of surface area. Certainly, oops, there's a car here, so I'm just 1 second. Okay, here we go. I have a moderate amount of surface area. I'm not renowned. I'm not famous. I have some interaction with the legal community in Toronto. I have some interaction with clients and potential clients who wish to receive legal assistance, mainly in the areas of employment law. So I have some surface area. My firm has served a great number of clients, thousands of clients over the last 10, 15 years. So in that sense, I have some moderate level of surface area and interaction with the wider world. I have some interaction with my team and my employees, and obviously people who work for me. And then beyond that, I have friends and family members who I have some influence over. They have influence over me. So that's more of a reciprocal relationship where these are relationships not of power, but of friendship or familial relationships. Beyond that, I'm, I guess, a global citizen. I'm a consumer, so I buy things. That has some small level of influence in terms of what I've bought and, for example, where I choose to travel. I mean, I've supported probably a lot of local hotel industries and restaurants in my life. The things I've bought, products and services I've bought, I'm sure that's had some level of influence on others. And maybe to some small extent, things like this, the YouTube videos and the intellectual products that I'm disseminating may have had some effect on some people. But that's it, right? That's it. Beyond that, and maybe I'm missing a couple of things, and perhaps I'm being too harsh on myself. But beyond these things, that's the extent of my surface area, and that may be higher than perhaps the average person. I would bet that is higher actually than the average person, but it's still not capital S success. It's moderate surface area, right? So really, to go from just attaining lower capital S, private success, to capital S success, you need to increase your surface area. So that is, in part, perhaps more points of interaction. So, using perhaps economies of scale or leveraging of some type. And this is all theoretical because I'm not exactly sure how to get there yet. So in part, this video is an exploration of some thoughts that I have, rather than necessarily thoughts that are perfectly refined. This is an exercise for me as well, this video. Perhaps leveraging and increasing that surface area in the same way that if you create one thing and you can copy that thing, a lot of people consume that thing, whatever it is, whether it's an idea or a product or a service, and if you could replicate it more and more and more and provide it to the masses, that certainly increases your surface area, your influence, your renown among the general population. And so that's maybe the first step is how do you replicate what you do, but make it sort of open to the public, making it more accessible, perhaps. And I'll touch on that when we talk about publicity, which is one of the points I'm going to talk about, which is point number 3, about how to achieve capital S success, but maybe replication, and also then who you're interacting with, right? And this is a thought that I had in terms of your surface area and your interaction could be limited to, or limited by, who you're interacting with. Suppose my 10 best friends, or the 10 people I interacted the most were the 10 richest people in the world, or the 10 most influential people in the world, or the 10 most inspiring people in the world. I would imagine that by virtue of being close to these people, my surface area would also inevitably increase and be stretched. So part of this journey and how to get there, it may be just seeking out people who are already achieving some level of capital S success, and being as close as you can to those people, learning from those people, interacting with those people, collaborating with those people. And it's very difficult, right? Because these are, there's fewer of these people than the general public. So to find and then to befriend or to have some type of relationship with the best of humanity, in a way, is a tall order. But that certainly is an escalator, is a shortcut to achieving that level of surface area. For example, look at this relationship now between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. And again, you don't have to agree with what they're doing, but certainly they're advancing each other's surface area quite a lot, right? Elon Musk was at one point just a rich guy, and now he's a policymaker, right? He's been invited into the inner circle of Donald Trump's cabinet, and now he has much wider influence than he did before. So they've, and also he helped Donald Trump win the campaign by some extent through his relentless donations. So there is that type of relationship you see in real time where people with large surface area can support other people with large surface area. So why can't it work the other way, where people with, and I'm sure this happens all the time, people with maybe not so much surface area, if you are able to get yourself very close with people who have a high degree of surface area, then they may bring you up. And conversely, if you're always interacting with people with very low surface area, they say you are the average of the 5 people you interact with the most, right? If you're only hanging out with people like my hypothetical person living in mom's basement and just playing video games, if you're only hanging out with people like that, that may actually bring you down. Again, from the perspective of capital S success. So things to think about in terms of surface area. Okay, the next topic is ethos. And what do I mean by ethos? It's what you're working on and how relevant is that to this sort of time, place, set. And what I mean by time, place, set is sort of the time, the place, the circumstances where you find yourself in. Some things are more relevant than others, and some things are less relevant. There's a horse behind me. I mean, let's use a horse as an example. Right, in the 1400s, 1500s in Florence, you see that this is the beautiful city of Florence here. I'm sure there were horse breeders. There were people who bred horses, and horses were very important. Horses were their version of our cars, right? Transportation and beasts of burden. I'm sure horses were very, very, very important. And if you were a horse breeder or worked in a stable, I'm sure that was very, very important work, and work that was appreciated, and probably work that was well compensated. But it didn't quite capture the ethos of what was happening here in Florence in the 1400s and 1500s, because Florence, as you know, was the birthplace of the Italian Renaissance, right? If you were an artist, an artisan, someone like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael, you would have captured the ethos of the time. Now, you wouldn't have known necessarily that this would have been the ethos, but certainly you would have captured it. And if you were one of the Medicis, the people who are the patrons of the arts, and in many ways these people were just as responsible, if not more responsible, for the Italian Renaissance as the artists, because they were the ones funding and commissioning these works of art. Without their commissions and without their encouragement of these artists, the Renaissance in the way that we know it would not have existed. So these people would have been very important as well, and they would have captured to some extent the ethos of the time. But our poor horse breeder and the people running the bakeries and whoever, those people, they did important work for their time, but they would not have captured the ethos of their time, and they would have been forgotten in history because it was just not their. What they were doing was just incongruent, not necessarily incongruent, but it wasn't the most congruent with the energy of the time. So if you take a look at our time now, it's 2025. What are the big things happening in the world? Well, artificial intelligence, huge, right? Artificial intelligence and the development of artificial intelligence, the implications, the technology, how it's going to transform humanity. That's a huge one. There's environmental degradation and climate change, right? How we interact with the planet and how the planet may interact with us, right? That's a huge issue. There's this global realignment that's happening in the world, sort of this multipolar world where you have multiple world powers, vying for supremacy. What that means for the world order, whether that would lead to war or peace or whatever that would lead to, this political dynamic. That's part of the ethos. 10 years ago, a very prevalent ethos was terrorism. Right? Everybody was afraid that they would be blown up if they, sat somewhere in a cafe and some suicide bomber would come in and blow them up. But there's different levels of ethos at different times, right? And the question is what you're doing in life, like how you spend your time in terms of your career, in terms of your passion. Is that part of this ethos? Or are you a little bit far removed from this ethos? And the closer you are to what the world is doing at this point in time, or I guess it's hard to say what the world is doing, but the energy, right, the beating heart of whatever is happening at the time, right, the driving energy. If you're part of that driving energy, then chances are you can attain capital level success probably a bit sooner, or you're able to attain capital level success. And if you're far removed from the ethos of the time, then it may be less likely for you to attain capital level success. So if I were to again, use my own life as an example. I work as a lawyer in employment law. Is that really part of the ethos of 2025, of this particular decade, of this particular century? Not really. Not really. I mean, if I did a bit more work in artificial intelligence and maybe was a leader in artificial intelligence and the law, and as well an intersection with, for me, that may be relevant, is the intersection of workers' rights and the right of people to work and to have work in the world of artificial intelligence, when a lot of their work is being replaced. I think that would really capture the ethos of the time. And if I did more work in that area and perhaps published or became a thought leader in these topics, that would perhaps be more relevant to what I'm doing. Because certainly there are lots of lawyers in the world, right? Lawyers are everywhere, right? And the work that lawyers are doing are not necessarily part of the ethos. It's important day-to-day work in that, the work that you do as well, I'm sure, many of you, is important day-to-day work. The Uber drivers, the cleaners, right? The accountants, the shopkeepers, the nurses, the school teachers, the engineers, the doctors, all of these people. You're doing good work. You're doing important work. But the reason you don't have capital S success is because in part the work is not really part of the ethos of what's happening, right? You can be the best bus driver in the world right now, but that's just not what the world is thinking about. That's not where the energy of the world is focused. You could be a really amazing school teacher and have you'd be educating a lot of kids and do a really good job and be a really valued member of society, and I commend you for that. But you don't have capital S success. Now, you may not want it; it may not be relevant to you, but you don't have it. The people who have obtained capital S success, at least in the last couple of decades, they're a lot of the tech entrepreneurs, right? These are the people who really built the rails for this new level of reality that we live in, right? Which I call tertiary reality, and I have a number of videos about what I mean by this. But the people who built the rails, right? The people who built, people like Bill Gates who designed Microsoft, Larry Page and Sergey Brin who developed Google, Zuckerberg with Facebook, Meta, Elon Musk. These sort of engineers, scientists, tech entrepreneurs, whatever you want to call them, business people, sort of a combination of these characteristics. They've really captured the ethos of the time in terms of this is what the world wants and needs, and this group of people with their set of skills really capitalized. If we put people like Da Vinci and Michelangelo and Raphael, and Da Vinci I think would maybe do quite well in today's world. Raphael and Michelangelo, sculptors and artists, maybe they would do well, maybe not, right? Maybe they would have actually functioned better in the Renaissance and would not have attained capital S success in today's world if we were just to transplant them. So it's important to think about your work because we spend so much time working, don't we? We spend so much time in our careers on work. I think it's important to think about what we're working on, but also what we're working on relative to what is important to the world, right? So this is the part that's hard for a lot of people because we're passionate about our own thing, right? We're passionate about, hey, this is what I'm passionate about, but the world may not have much need or care for your passions, right? The world and the dynamics of the world and the movement of the world may have a particular request of you, and can you respond to that? Can you rise to the occasion? That's a question that requires some level of contemplation. For me, for you, can you be part of this movement, or are you really not part of what's relevant right now in the world? And even better, can you create what's going to be relevant, right? Can you innovate and create what's going to be relevant in the next phase of the world? I mean, that would really be the next step, right? Riding the wave of not riding the wave, but being the crescent of the wave yourself. I mean, being so visionary that that whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's artistic or political or scientific, creating that wave. And so you generate the ethos of what how people behave. I mean, think of Steve Jobs, right? Like with the invention of the iPhone, and the way that we interact with devices. Like he's created a way of behavior, right? If you think of like what he's done, and he's passed away, but like in terms of iPhones and iPads and whatever, he's created not just a way of accessing information and communicating, but he's created a type of behavior, right? Human behavior, like in terms of how we use our thumbs, how we interact with our devices, how we live. Our very identity, in a sense, has been shaped to an extent, by one man in that aspect. So he certainly was a visionary. Now, this may not be good or bad, because a lot of people complain that we spend too much time on our devices. But again, creating works that are part of the ethos, or generating the new ethos, that's going to be important for public success. Okay, so let's move on to the next topic, which is publicity. And this is where it becomes interesting, because a lot of the work that we do is in fact not very public, right? The work that I do as a lawyer, the work that a doctor does, right? When you grow up, your parents tell you should become a lawyer, you should become a doctor, you should do this type of stuff. This is high-paying work. It's well respected, and to a large extent, this is true. But it's not very public work, right? Fundamentally, the work that I do, a lot of it is actually confidential. So part of the hallmark of my practice, and of the practice of any lawyer, is some level of confidentiality, because most clients don't necessarily want their files and their matter to be made public, unless there's a public trial or something that is of a public nature. Doctors, I'm sure, have some level of privacy, confidentiality parameters around their work. They're not necessarily, webcamming and live streaming every surgery that they do, right? So if you think about the professions that your mom and dad told you were good professions, right, in terms of being a doctor or being a lawyer. And most of the professions in the world that mom and dad told you were good professions, they're not very public, and there's nothing wrong with that. But they're just not public. So from the perspective of publicity, if you're an accountant, an engineer, a business consultant, a web designer, a programmer, a lawyer, a doctor, project manager, an HR manager, most of these good jobs, right, that people have, they're not in the public eye. So if you look at someone playing in the NBA, for example, right, the National Basketball Association, or sports athletes, their work is very public. So, the same. Obviously, they're not doing the same work that I'm doing. But if you were just to compare apples to oranges and just to compare work to work, the work that I'm doing is mostly private, and the work that they're doing is public, in the sense that people actually get to observe their work. You could critique their work, you can see their work. Their work becomes part of the public commons to some extent. And that is the escalator to public success, is to have the public eye on you. And of course, it's not always good, right? Like, a lot of people complain that there's too much publicity or paparazzi, but that's part of the territory of public success. It is the publicity itself, is to do things that are consumable by the public. If you don't do work that is consumable by the public, then it's not public work, and therefore you can't achieve public success. I think this is sort of an obvious point, but a point that is perhaps lost on most people as to, well, why am I not as famous as someone in the NBA or someone in a sports league or a famous singer or a famous actor or actress? I do, my work is just as important, right? So you often get this question, something like this. It's like, for example, a doctor, right? Doctor saves lives. Why do they get paid less than say a rock star, right? So there's often you get this type of interesting question about economics, like why is it that the rock star or these sports athletes, these musicians, these entertainers, movie stars, they get paid a lot more than these top surgeons. Not to say these top surgeons don't get paid a lot, but these top movie stars certainly get paid a lot more. Well, to some extent, the answer lies in the fact that the surgeon, even though performs to an extent of public service, is not performing public work, right? No one's observing the surgery beyond perhaps the nurses. It's not a publicly accessible piece of work. Now, conversely, if all surgeries were public, and by virtue of the nature of the work, if all surgeries and all legal work were completely public, right? You have access to every single email that I'm writing, and you can see all of my negotiations, and you can listen in on every phone call that I'm making and see how I do things. It would be a very different world, right? Like, imagine that. Imagine as a lawyer, I have to live stream everything, right? Or the nature of the work is where society allows you to live stream everything. So every client call that I do, right, is live streamed, and all the emails that I write is immediately accessible to you. Every negotiation, all the mediations, the trials, the all of my work, how I interact with my staff, right? I'm just a 24/7 reality TV show as a lawyer. Now that would make me very popular, I think. But it's just not the nature of the work that I do. It's not the nature of the profession. And that's, in a way, puts me at a disadvantage from the perspective of public success relative to athletes and movie stars and people who are in the public eye. And I don't think my work is any less valuable than the work that they're doing. And in many ways, depending on who you ask, my work may be more valuable than the movie stars and the and the professional athletes, in that they're helping people and that type of stuff. And the movie stars and the athletes, well, they're just entertaining people. So goes the argument. But yeah, the nature of the work is often very private, and this stretches to most of the work that people do, don't you think? Right? People who work for government, right? If you're working as a tax collector, it's not very public work that you're doing. It's important work. The bureaucracy, right? If you're working in any of the different ministries within the government, if you're working as a police officer or a firefighter, there's some element of publicity to your work, but you're not a celebrity firefighter or a celebrity policeman. Yeah, it's just that certain types of work gears itself towards publicity, and certain types of work does not. So then the question becomes, if you're transitioning to private success to public success, you would really want then to make as much of your work public as you can. So starting with what you have, you would want to publicize with the intent of that publicity. I want to make as much of it public. And that's a thought that I have. It's something that I need to contemplate It's something that I need to figure out. How do I do that? How do I take work that is often inherently private? How do I make it more public and more accessible? Or how do I find different intersections between what I do with things that are more consumable by the general public? Right? Should I be doing maybe courses, public courses? Videos about. That's an idea I had last night. Maybe videos about negotiation and using the skills that I've generated, but making it more about say a skill set like negotiation. That could be an idea. Advertising. Sometimes advertising makes you into a public figure. Maybe more creative and blatant advertising. I don't know. I actually don't know the answer to this question. Again, this is my journal, if you will. This is part of a contemplation that I'm, and a reflection that I'm actively having today. And I just happen to be filming it. so I don't know the answer. I actually, it's going to be, but the question is an interesting question, and I think it's an important question. And it's something that I need to think about actively as I certainly want to transition some of my work into public work. Okay, next topic is desire. There we go. Okay, so desire is the final topic, which is you need to have the desire for wanting to be a public figure and wanting to have capital S success, right? If you don't want it, then you're never going to achieve it because it's not important to you. So you need to want to be the best, right, at something, or the smartest, or you want to outcompete, or you want to be an innovator. Again, since I'm in Florence, if you look at the history of some of these Renaissance artists, again, like Michelangelo, Raphael, Leonardo, these people wanted to be the best, right? They had a absolute strong desire to be the best, to be innovative, to push the envelope, to outcompete each other. Now the really interesting thing is that Leonardo had actually met Michelangelo, and they were rivals to a certain extent. And Michelangelo, to a certain extent, was a rival to Raphael, right? So all of these people existed. They lived sort of along the same timeline, and they had all met each other to some degree. So there was some active rivalry between these Renaissance artists, these greats, if you will. So you'd have to really want to be the best at what you do, or the best at what you set your eyes to. I think that desire is important, and we live in a world of mediocrity. We live in a world that encourages mediocrity. We live in a world that encourages you to be average. That's just good enough. And a lot of people drink that Kool-Aid, right? They drink this. The poison of mediocrity, and they just accept that for themselves. They accept mediocrity, and they accept that there's not much more they can do with their lives. They accept that having a little bit is just good enough, and I think it's a very poisonous ideology. I think just not striving to be the best version of yourself, not striving to do more, not I know. I think it's just a poisonous ideology that encourages laziness and encourages just this level of stagnation, because you always want to push yourself. You always want to do more, be more, be the best version of yourself, contribute more, as much as you can, at least. So that desire, and some people have it, some people have that fire in their belly, and some people really don't. So you have to ask yourself, do you have that fire, right? Do you do you want to be the best? Do you want to be renowned, or well known, famous? Do you want to make that historic contribution to the world, to society? Right. I mean, look at this this dome here, right here. I mean, you can see this dome, right? This was a monumental achievement by an engineer, an architect, 500 years ago, right? This particular dome, and the guy who designed the dome, he outcompeted a number of other people to get the rights to design and implement this dome. He wanted to be the best. He wanted to build the biggest dome, and he did. Right? And eventually he did. It took him a long time, and there were many close calls, and he almost failed. But eventually, this beautiful dome, he built it, and now it's the centerpiece of Florence. Now it's the beating heart, the crown jewel of the entire city, and this was in large part to attributed to the ambitions of one person. So, is that you? Do you want to be that person, to really be the best at what you do, to do the impossible, to push limits, and that's really the final piece of the puzzle to the four criteria is that insatiable desire to be the best, and to want it, because it takes a lifetime and it takes a lot of work. If you don't want it, you will falter. You really need to have that burning insatiable desire, and that consistency, right? And to want it throughout your entire life, to keep pushing, and to push yourself, and to push yourself, and to push yourself even more. And only then can you achieve that level of capital S success, should you choose to pursue that goal. Those are my thoughts for today on capital S success, on public success versus private success. Again, this video is mostly for me. This is a contemplation that I've been having, and I just wanted to put it onto video because it's helpful for me to talk about these things and to attempt to refine some of my ideas. I hope to make a subsequent video on this topic, maybe in a few months or perhaps after I've taken some particular steps. But if I were to summarize how I think I can achieve a level of public success, and this is where I'm just going to contemplate and apply what I have talked about today to me. I think it's important, number one, for me to seek out and collaborate with amazing people, right? To seek out and collaborate with people who've already achieved some level of success, perhaps great success, and who have different skill sets, and to collaborate with them and to be around them more. I think that's something that that's become quite evident in talking about this topic today, is that this is not achieving public success is not a solo game. It's a team sport, and I need to find those people. I need to contribute to the projects that they're working on, and be part of a larger team of other people who also want the same thing. Because I think doing it in isolation is going to be too difficult, and there's no guarantee of success, and there's no way to bounce ideas off of other people, and there's no current to take you further, right? You can help. Other people who are already doing really amazing work. You can be part of that current, part of that wave. So I think that's one thing that I really need to think about very, very carefully in terms of my career, which is who I'm collaborating with, and really make an effort to collaborate with the best, and to be in that inner circle. So I think that's important for me. In terms of other things that I've learned today in filming this video, I think it's important for me to remember the ethos of the time. I think for me, artificial intelligence is going to be really, really important. Out of all the other major global things that are happening in the world today, with all the advancements in the world, with all the problems in the world, and certainly there are many problems. Like poverty is a big issue, right? There's certain conflicts in the world that these are big issues. Environmental degradation, that's a big issue. But I think the issue that I may have the most to say, and the one that I may have maybe the ability to contribute the most on, maybe as a scholar or a philosopher, is, I think, a human's relationship with artificial intelligence. And perhaps I can be one of the ambassadors of humanity with respect to artificial intelligence. I feel, and perhaps AI is my last name, right? So maybe there's a connection there. But this is a monumental shift in our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with technology, our relationship with the future. And we need strong leaders. We absolutely need strong leaders to navigate this particular shift, this sea change. And I believe I can be one of those strong leaders. I can be one of the ambassadors of humanity as we confront, as we cooperate, as we deal, and as we conflict with the rise of artificial intelligence. And perhaps with my skills as a lawyer, there is something that I can do to amalgamate those skills. I don't know how. I'm not sure what it looks like yet. Perhaps I will be the first to draft the Artificial Intelligence Bill of Rights at some point in the future to perhaps limit the rights of artificially intelligent beings. Maybe they're not allowed to own property. Maybe we shouldn't give them that right to own property, for example, or the right to do certain things. Maybe they have other rights, but maybe we need to define what their rights are, and we should define it pretty early. I honestly believe that I could be a thought leader in this area, and it's something that I need to figure out my role in the ethos. And in every time and place, in every century, every decade, there is a particular ethos, and you have to be focusing on the right thing. You can't ignore the ethos. Number 3 is the conversion of some of the work that I'm doing right now into something that is more consumable by the masses. I'm not too sure how to do that yet. I mean, there's only so many employment law clients I can serve, right? And we're serving them individually, and there's only so many people I can hire, right? So it's, in a way, I'm running just a barber shop, right, or a restaurant. The barber shop only has so many slots, or the restaurant only has so many seats. It just happens to be legal services, but it's no different, right? I'm just a small business somewhere with a number of seats and a number of employees, and I have capacity issues. As well, I'm only licensed to practice in certain jurisdictions, mostly Ontario. So from a licensing perspective, I can't service everyone in the world. So how do I turn what is a geographically limited profession and work, sort of one that is limited by time and resources based on employees and the type of work that my employees are doing, how do I convert that into something that is consumable by the masses, right? So how do I create the metaphoric Ford assembly line on the work that I do, or maybe adjacent to the work that I do? Maybe it's impossible to create it on the work that I do, I can't single-handedly perhaps change the legal profession, but maybe there is something I can do to create some type of publicly consumable service or work that is adjacent to what I'm doing. I don't know what that looks like. Honestly, it may be something that I need to contemplate further and develop. But certainly if I go down the path of just doing legal work, then I will continue to attain some level of private success, and there's no issue with that. But I don't think I would ever obtain public success. Right? There are very few lawyers who attain public success just by being a lawyer. And those who do usually are celebrity lawyers, in that their trial was broadcast on TV. Right? The lawyer who did the O.J. Simpson trial, I think that was Kim Kardashian's dad, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, he attained some level of public success because he was broadcast on TV. Right? Everybody was interested in the O.J. Simpson trial. So, outside of these people who were lucky enough, to some extent, to have a high-profile case that was broadcast to the entire nation and internationally, most lawyers will then stagnate within the confines of their own law chambers and do important work, but not public work. Not in that sense. I mean, their work obviously has public implications, but not public work. So that's a tough one, because it does require thinking about what I do differently. And again, I don't know the answer, but it's certainly an important question. And finally, I need to continue to have that desire to be more, to strive, to accomplish more, to be the best version of myself, to self-actualize. I think that's going to be really important, because I lost that at one point. I think when I first started my law firm, I just wanted to be a small law firm. I wanted to travel and just, have some certain freedoms associated with being self-employed. And I had a small home office, and that was good enough for me, right? When I was 29, when I first started my law firm, that was just good enough. And I lived a good life. But I don't think that's good enough anymore. I think to self-actualize, to realize one's full potential, and I'm really talking about myself, to realize my full potential. Having a small firm and the luxury of being able to travel and having sufficient pocket money is just not enough as a person. It's a great start, but I don't think it's enough. I think that's, if I were to end my ambitions at this stage, I'm cheating myself. I'm honestly cheating myself of my full talents and my full potential. So this is not where I want to end. This is, in fact, where I want to start. That's my statement to the universe. That's my statement out there to the world, that I want to be the best. And I want to reach my full potential as a human being. And I don't want to be just an average person, but I want to be an extraordinary person. Obviously, the solution is to build more statues of myself, right? Because statues are key. Okay, this is Extraordinary Randy reporting from Florence, Italy. I think I've learned a lot from this video. It's good to put my thoughts onto video. You can think of this as a journal for myself that I'm making public, a vlog, if you will, a video blog. I hope you're having an amazing day. It's beautiful here in Florence, Italy. I'm inspired by this place of art, music, and innovation. And I hope you continue to secure and attain inspiration in your daily life. And as you strive to be the best version of yourself. I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye.